I'm Emma Marshall and this is a video for my level 3 leadership in forest school qualification. I have just had a fire in our permanent fire site in our forest school site, and now I am ready to extinguish it. So as I said in my previous video, the first step was to stop adding fuel, and that would let the fire burn through all of the fuel that is currently in the fire. And once it does that and it's got no more fuel left, we're starting to break the fire triangle. The flames die down and we're left with a little kind of ashy pile like we have now. I can still see some smoke coming off of it, which means it's still burning a little bit, and I can see some glowing embers. So the first step that I would do to start safely extinguishing my campfire is to use a big stick like this so that I'm at a safe distance, and I'm just going to start spreading out what's left of the fire. And spreading out is going to help it to cool down, which is going to reduce the heat. Again, thinking about breaking the fire triangle. You can still see some little embers in there, but we've got no more smoke, which means if it's not smoking anymore, then the fire is pretty much out. So the next thing that I can start to do is get some water. My bucket of water here and a jug. So the next step is to take some water and very lightly start to drizzle water, and we're going in a spiral from the outside of the fire into the middle. You don't want to start in the middle, because if there are any embers that fly up or there is a lot of smoke, that will then blow in your face while you've got your hands over it. So you want to start on the outside. Hear it hiss a little bit in the middle. I'm going to go again. Just going to hold my hand over. Holding your bare hand over, but at a sensible distance, can help you feel for any hot spots left in the fire. So I can feel that bit there is still quite hot. So I'm going to go again with some more water. Spiraling from the outside to the inside. I can't see any more embers, I can't see any more smoke. I'm feeling over the top of it, and it's feeling a lot cooler. I get my big stick again. And I'm just looking for anything that looks like it still might be alight. Any embers, any signs of hot spots. It's looking good. And then I'm going to check with my hand again. Oh, we've got a little bit of smoke there. Check with my hand again. Okay, that is feeling quite cold. You can start to move your hand closer. It's feeling cool. And then what I'm going to do with my stick is I'm just going to start moving some of the ground underneath my ash and start to mix it in. Again, we're thinking about breaking this fire triangle, so we're thinking about removing heat, and mixing it into the cool ground is going to remove some of the oxygen and remove some of the heat, and I'm starting to mix it together. Any signs of heat or fire, and we'll add more water. Want to make sure that the fire is completely extinguished and completely cold before we leave our forest school site. We would never leave a session where a fire has been used without it being completely extinguished and safe and completely cold. And that's for our safety, the safety of the trees and the forest around us, and for the safety of anybody else who might be walking through or using the forest. So you can see that I've kind of mixed the ground below, and even though the ground below is already kind of charred and burned, so you might not be able to see that well, but I've mixed that all together. That should now feel completely cold, and I'm going to put my hand on it, so I'm confident that that is now cold. Now this is obviously a permanent fire site, so a permanent fire site I could leave this like this, where it's cold to the touch, we've mixed it all in. We're leaving the permanent fire site as we found it. So with a permanent fire site, we can't use our leave no trace ethos. This is quite clearly a fire circle, and this is quite clearly a fire pit. So anybody who walks by, this has got public right of access when we're not in session. Anybody who comes by can quite clearly see that this is an area for fire use. But we want to discourage people from using it for fires as much as possible, people who perhaps don't know how to light fires safely, who could cause a hazard to others and to the forest. So we don't want to encourage anybody to use this fire pit other than us. So even though we can't use a leave no trace ethos, we can leave it as we found it. So that means that it's completely cold. We can scoop up and scatter some of the ashes if we want to. We could cover it over if we want to. The fire circle is always there, but we can make sure that we don't encourage them by taking away all of our resources away with us. Obviously take away all of our equipment that we bought. We bring the fire equipment up to site for a session where we intend to light a fire and take it away with us again, so we're never leaving any fire equipment on site. And any spare timber, which I've got piled here that we haven't used, I would take that and then re-scatter that back around the forest so that there aren't any resources or anything that would encourage somebody to light a fire in this location. I would leave it as I found it, and when I came there hadn't been a fire for a while because we're in the summer holidays, so I had to move some of the leaf litter out of the way so I could recover that and leave it exactly as I found it. The difference between using a permanent site and a temporary site is really how you leave it at the end. So we can continue to turn over the soil if we were using a temporary fire site. We keep turning over the soil, and then because it's cold enough to the touch, I could scoop it up with my bare hands and then scatter the ashes around the forest. I would then recover the ground with all the leaf litter. So if I lay a fire in a place where there isn't a fire pit and it's a temporary fire site, I make sure that I scatter all of my ashes around once they're cold to the touch, and then I cover it over with the leaf litter. So that does follow the leave no trace ethos. That ground might be scorched and the material of the soil might be damaged, but actually from the surface nobody would know that you'd had a fire in that location, and that discourages other people from lighting a fire there as well. Here in our forest site, we will only light a fire in our fire pit. We don't light fires anywhere else. Again, in a temporary fire site, you take all your resources with you. If you've used rocks to make a little fire pit and line the edges of your intended area of fire, you would move those back as well. You would make sure that they're not hot to the touch before you do that. And so the idea is that whether you have a permanent or a temporary fire site, you're leaving it as you found it. You're not encouraging anybody else to use the site for a fire. I am all sorted here, so I can now pack up all of my things. I'm going to take my wastewater back with me. I'm going to pour it back into the bottle and take it back with me because I don't want to leave any kind of wastewater or any kind of litter. So I'm now going to clear up my site and make sure that everything that is here is removed before I leave.